Filling right. Our team of correspondents are there covering the trial. It's the same courtroom, same courthouse where former police officer Derek Chauvin was convicted of murder for the death of George Floyd in April. CourtTV's Julia Janae will be joining us in just a few minutes. But first, the snake breeder murder trial. The defendant, Lindley Rennick, is expected to take the stand in a matter of minutes in Missouri. She's accused of premeditated murder in the shooting death of her husband, Ben, a well-known snake breeder. Prosecutors say she planned and carried out this murder. This morning, she'll have a chance to tell the jury a different story. Here is the look at the moment yesterday outside the presence of the jury when Judge Kevin Crane asked Lindley Rennick, "Do you really want to testify?"
So, Mr. Hesselman, I've got your permission to inquire of your client as to her testimonial rights? Yes. Okay. Ms. Rennick, you understand you have a constitutional right not to testify. You understand that?
Yes.
And do you understand that if you choose not to testify, that decision will not be held against you? And do you understand that the jury can and will be instructed, if your attorney wants to me to give that instruction, to draw no adverse inference from your decision not to testify?
Yes.
Do you understand that if you do choose to testify, the prosecutor's going to have the right to cross-examine you, and you know what that is, okay? And that could include questions about any prior criminal convictions you may have, and I don't know if you got any, but that could be included, okay? Do you want more time to talk to your attorneys about this decision, whether or not to testify?
No.
No,
I don't need more time to talk to them about it.
well, you think she does, don't you?
I don't understand what you're...
Usually we do this during, like, the jury's out, they're coming in. The question is, does she have adequate time to talk to her attorneys about testifying or not?
Yes, she has.
She has?
Yes.
Okay. Well, do you want to testify?
Yes.
You do? Okay. And you understand everything I've gone over with you about that decision?
Yes.
And you understand that you should consult with your attorneys about that decision, but it's ultimately yours alone to make. Okay?
We expect that the defense will have one, as they described it, short witness before the defendant, Lindley Rennick, takes the stand. At the bottom of the hour is when the judge has asked the jury to return, and court is expected to be underway. And as soon as there's any action in that courtroom, we, of course, will get you in live. It'll be fascinating to see how Lindley Rennick holds up on the witness stand. Joining us now, trial attorney Michelle Thomas. She's in Silver Springs, Maryland, and criminal defense attorney Jeffrey Wolf is in Denver, Colorado. Michelle, this was one that, most people thought, no way she takes the stand because of her behavior, especially after her husband, Ben, died. She lied to everybody. She even she basically whispered to the police, you might want to check out his brother, Sam. Just behavior that is going to be, I don't know how she responds. Your thoughts on this decision by this defendant at this point?
Yeah, it's a really, really risky decision to have a defendant take the stand in any criminal case, particularly where there's murder charges that are pending. And in this particular case, to your point, Ted, and good morning to you, but to your point, her behavior post the act reeks of guilt. And so that is the problem that she's going to have to overcome. She should expect a very rigorous cross-examination by the prosecution. It's a very risky endeavor, but I presume that she believes she has no choice, or her lawyers certainly have probably advised her, but she believes she has no choice but to take the stand. But it's a very risky decision that she is making given the facts of this case.
Jeffrey Wolf, this could be a Hail Mary. Let's face it, it's not going well for the defense in this case. Your thoughts overall on her taking the stand, and if you are representing her, how do you handle her in terms of prep for a cross?
So basically, the decision is always going to rest with the defendant. So she has decided she's going to testify, and so that's what it is, right? You give them the advice, you let them know whether you think it's a good idea, and they make the decision from there. And given all of the witnesses that have come in and told this story of what she did in this case, it's pretty hard for her to not have the instinct to get up there and say, no, I didn't do that. No, that's not the way things happened. And Also, add on to that the guilty knowledge actions afterwards. She probably wants to explain that, and it might be a good idea for her to do that. As far as preparing, there isn't a lot you can do to really get somebody to actually be ready for it. The best that you can do is find the meanest lawyer you know to come in and consult and play the prosecutor. So you do a mock direct and you do a mock cross, and you just let the lawyer beat up your client as hard as you think the prosecutor is going to do. See how your client responds. Give tips on the emotion that's part of that, give tips on how to respond, how not to respond, where you don't script what they're saying, but you script how they respond, what the emotional responses are, their body language, things like that, because juries are paying as much attention to that as the words coming out of their mouth.
Michelle, she seems to have a very soft voice. Her father described her as a meek person overall. Could she build up a little bit of a connection with even one juror to get them to think, you know what, I believe this person more than I do that Michael Humphreys who showed up with his handcuffs and his leg irons? There's an opening, is there not?
Well, there's always a possibility, but let's put it this way. She absolutely has to build up a rapport with the jury. She has to garner a level of sympathy and get them to empathize with her and her situation as an alleged battered wife. That is her responsibility when she does take the stand, because if she does not make that connection, the jury certainly already has significant evidence against her to convict her. So her future, her fate absolutely depends on her ability to connect with the jury and compel them to empathize with her as an alleged battered wife.
Jeffrey, what should we be listening for from the state on cross-examination?
Anything that they can do to poke holes in what she was doing, as well as their demeanor. What we've seen from her attorney is very, very aggressive cross-examination from the word go with all of these witnesses that are pointing the finger at the defendant in this case. And so the prosecution, if they're smart, is going to counter that by being a little bit softer, especially if she comes off as softer. Because one of the things that I've always stressed is most important in a trial is who the jury thinks they can trust and who they're going to believe as a result. And so if one side is yelling at the witnesses and the other side is doing an effective job of questioning them without having to yell, that is going to go a long way with the jury. Now, she may be a difficult witness and may cause them to have to badger a little bit, but it's going to be interesting to see if they try to adopt a softer tone, because I think they should.
Yeah, and it's about reading the jury too, is it not, Michelle? Kevin Zellner, Kelly King are the prosecutors. That's Kevin Zellner. We don't know who will be doing the cross. We do know that Mr. Zellner has been very aggressive in pre-trial motion hearings outside the presence of the jury, and even to the point of sarcasm when dealing with Lindley Rennick. Kelly King, probably she did the open. It was very, to Jeffrey's point, she was very soft, if you will. How important is it to whoever's doing it that they're reading the jury and they don't beat up the meek little Lindley?
So it's critically important that you read the jury throughout the trial. You have to gauge whether the jury is involved and whether they're following your storyline, whether they are sympathizing or empathizing at all with the witness on the witness stand. But in this particular case, it would certainly behoove the defendant to not be a difficult witness on the stand because of her past history or of lack of candor, if you will, alleged in her prior statements and what's come out, the evidence that's come out so far. So it would certainly behoove her to try to be as straightforward as possible, to convey and bolster a level of credibility, and it would behoove the prosecution when they're cross-examining her to sort of match the tenor of her testimony and make sure that they're not too harsh to turn off the jury.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating chess match being played out this morning. Again, we're expecting court to resume in about 20 minutes from now. There's one witness, according to the defense, before Lindley Rennick takes the stand. So we'll get you into the courtroom as soon as the judge is on the bench. But coming up, opening statements begin this morning in the other major trial that we are covering in Minnesota. It is Minnesota versus Kim Potter. We are live in Hennepin County next with our Julia Janae. Stay with us. The trial of former Minnesota police officer Kim Potter is set to begin with opening statements this morning. During the voir dire process last week, the potential jurors were told that the defendant plans to take the witness stand during her trial, tell her side of the story. Potter's accused of killing Dante Wright after pulling out a gun instead of a taser during a traffic stop back in April. The shooting was captured on Potter's police body camera. She faces first and second degree manslaughter charges. If convicted, she faces at least a decade in prison. CourtTV legal correspondent Julia Janae is in downtown Minneapolis. Good morning to you, Julia. Opening statements. What are we expecting in terms of themes from both sides?
Good morning, Ted. We can expect that both of these sides here, 8 months after this incident happened, will be focused on the body camera footage that the defendant wore herself. Kimberly Potter's body camera video. We don't know if it's going to be played during those opening statements, but we know it's going to be referenced because it is really the visual part of this case. Let's take a look at that day on April 11th, 2021.
Don't, it's not, bro. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Of course, we know in that moment, Dante Wright is shot by the duty weapon of the defendant. She is going to be arguing through her attorneys that she intended to pull her taser in that moment and use those words, taser, 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 before firing. Now, here's a look at the state's case, what their themes are. They don't intend to say that Potter intended to kill Dante Wright, that she intentionally pulled her gun instead of her taser, but they are telling this jury that her rash and reckless conduct, it's something that she should have known how to properly deploy a weapon. This is a manslaughter case, and recklessness is at the heart of one of those 2 counts against her. They also say that she intentionally acted in choosing use of force, which we expect the prosecutors to say she should not have used force, even the taser in that incident, and that they will go through that taser training that she learned even in the months leading up to this incident. Here's a look at the defense case. What we know are the defenses that she'll be putting on. She'll be claiming that this is an innocent accident, an innocent mistake, not one that was reckless or that was culpable negligence. And she is going to be claiming that her perceived use of the taser was reasonable, that it was okay under the use of force doctrine or statutes that she use a taser in that instance, and that there's a lack of causation, that she didn't have not only the mens rea, the intent required under the statute for manslaughter, but that she did not intend the causing of this, that this was simply an accident in the use of her weapon versus the taser.
Today, big day for the prosecution. It always is. When you begin a long case, they're expecting it to go a couple weeks. Who are we expecting to be some of the first witnesses for the state of Minnesota?
And we're expecting that they do have a use of force expert that they will be putting on the stand, and they'll also be calling members of Dante Wright's family. They actually, during the pretrial stage of this, went back and forth over whether or not some of these members can be inside of the courtroom. In particular one, Dante Wright's mother, Katie Bryant, someone who we've seen in press conferences. There she is right in the days after her son was killed by the defendant. She's someone who not only can talk about her son from a spark of life standpoint, telling this jury who he was so that they see him as someone who was human, but also she's a fact witness. She's someone who will be testifying about what she perceived on the phone with her son that day in April, where he called her because he was being pulled over by police. We learned first in the original complaint that they pulled him over and ran his tags or ran the information to find out that there was a warrant. Then in the amended complaint, we learned more from the official standpoint that he had some air fresheners in his window, his rearview window or mirror rather, and that police believed that that was a violation. That's why they pulled him over. Also that his tags were expired. So he called his mom, according to Katie Bryant, to tell her what was going on, and the phone was there while this was happening on. So she will be able to tell this jury what she perceived, what her son's state of mind may have been at the time, and what he told her.
Yeah, and obviously it'll be emotional and a big witness for the state. Let's compare, because behind you we see that the snow is back. That's the same. But what's different with the Hennepin County Government Center when you compare it between what's happening now during this trial and what was going on in the wake of George Floyd's death and Derek Chauvin's trial?
These are two high-profile cases that this area, Minneapolis, is seeing all within the same year, with, of course, the death of Daunte Wright happening as the Derek Chauvin trial was going on. To take a look at what it looks like outside of the courthouse here in Minneapolis as we are gearing up for the case against Potter. One marked difference is the lack of the fortress that we saw around this building during the Derek Chauvin trial. There was National Guard presence, there was a chain link fence, then concrete barriers, there were layers of security. We don't see that here, but here's a look back in April to Brooklyn Center. When this happened, the National Guard was already in place at the Derek Chauvin trial, but then they went to Brooklyn Center because of the unrest that erupted after the death of Daunte Wright. And that was just the overlap, the tension that you could see, the security issues. Even Potter's own home was protected by the same barricades and fencing just to protect her during the just outpouring after the death of Daunte Wright and the call for justice in that case. So markedly different as far as the environment, but inside of the courtroom, we are going to see some similarities, especially with the parties. We are seeing the same prosecution team that is handling this case against Potter. We have Matthew Frank, who was one of the lead prosecutors prosecuting Derek Chauvin, and Earl Gray, who wasn't an attorney for Derek Chauvin, but he was an attorney for one of the co-defendants of Derek Chauvin, someone who is still accused and has a trial pending in the death of George Floyd. Thomas Lane is who Earl Gray represents. He is one of the attorneys for Potter. So similar inside of the courtroom, dissimilar outside. Now, of course, with just a different feel and mood here in Minneapolis as things gear up for this trial that so many are interested in seeing.
Absolutely. Opening statements again getting underway later this morning in downtown Minneapolis. Julia Janae, thank you. Let's switch gears. More than 17 years has gone by since Scott Peterson was sentenced to death. Well, today in a California courtroom, he is scheduled to be resentenced by a judge in San Mateo County. Peterson was originally sentenced for the murders of his pregnant wife, Lacey, and their unborn son, Connor. But the California Supreme Court overturned that sentence over an error made by the judge, Judge DeLucchi, back in 2004. Here's more on the story.
It was one of the most notorious murder cases of the 21st century. Scott and Lacey Peterson, a young California couple expecting their first child, when Lacey disappeared and her husband became the prime suspect.
State of California versus Scott Peterson. We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Scott Lee Peterson, guilty of the crime of murder of Lacey Denise Peterson.
In November of 2004, Scott Peterson was convicted of murder in the deaths of his pregnant wife, Lacey, and their unborn son, Connor, in their Modesto, California home. Prosecutors say he dumped their bodies in San Francisco Bay from his fishing boat after killing them around Christmas Eve 2002. Their remains washed ashore the following spring. Peterson claimed he was innocent.
The most likely thing that happened is that she was abducted, and she was abducted by someone other than my client.
but the jury and the public didn't buy it.
It doesn't match up. Who goes fishing by themselves Christmas Eve in a boat?
Peterson's trial became a sordid tale of deception and infidelity. His affair with massage therapist Amber Fry exposed as she turned state's evidence.
We did have a romantic relationship.
Fry secretly recorded conversations between her and Peterson. In one such call, Peterson claimed he was in Paris when he was actually in Modesto while hundreds of volunteers were searching for his pregnant wife.
Amber, clear, are you there? Yes, are you having a good time? I'm near the Eiffel Tower.
Amber Fry's testimony helped prosecutors secure the guilty verdicts against Scott Peterson. Crowds of people gathered outside this San Mateo courthouse and reacted to the verdicts as they were being read.
Find the defendant, Scott Lee Peterson, guilty of the crime of murder of Lacey Denise Peterson.
Peterson was sentenced to death for his crimes, but it was justice that brought very little comfort to those close to Lacey and Connor.
There's many times that I wake up in the middle of the night. I just wake up and I just start crying because I realize that Lacey's gone and that I'll never see her again.
It must have been very hard for you all to go from loving Scott like a son to have a completely different mindset.
It was for me.
After 17 years on death row in August of 2020, the California Supreme Court overturned Scott Peterson's death sentence.
Calling the matter of the people versus Scott Lee Peterson.
The High Court ruled that jurors who personally disagreed with the death penalty but were willing to impose it were improperly dismissed. It was a setback for prosecutors who announced they would not seek to have Peterson executed. Peterson is now being resentenced for his crimes in a procedural hearing where the only possible punishment is life in prison without the possibility of parole.
And that hearing taking place later today in San Mateo County, California. Still ahead here, closing arguments set for this morning in the trial of Jussie Smollett in Chicago. Jurors will soon have this case and they'll weigh the evidence. They'll weigh what they've heard. Prosecutors claim this was a hoax. Jussie Smollett says no, it wasn't. More from Chicago after the break. Welcome back. Closing arguments are set for this morning in Chicago against former Empire actor Jussie Smollett. Jurors over the past 2 weeks have heard about the bigotry-fueled attack that supposedly took place in January of 2019 that prosecutors claim was all fabricated in an attempt to boost Smollett's publicity numbers. The defense rested yesterday after the defendant was on the stand for 2 days. He told jurors about the attack he was sure was a hate crime. Something he wasn't able to tell jurors was who exactly he thought attacked him. When questioned if he recognized the men who said they were hired as part of the hoax, Smollett said, "In that moment, I'm not going to stop and say, hey, Bola, was that you? I don't know. It was pretty fast. It was an attack." When shown surveillance footage around the time of the incident by prosecutor Webb, Smollett went on to say, "I doubt every word they say." Webb then asked, "So is that them?" Smollett responded, "I just don't know. They're liars. They also said I had something to do with it, and that's not true." After closing arguments, the jury will be instructed, and then, of course, they will deliberate the fate of the actor. This is a fascinating case. Let's go back to Michelle Thomas and Jeffrey Wolf. Michelle's in Silver Springs, Maryland, and Jeffrey's in Denver, Colorado. Jeffrey, to you first on this one. Risky move to take the stand here, but if you follow along, and again, we don't have cameras in this courtroom. The judge did not allow us to put our cameras in the courtroom, so it's hard to judge exactly how the witnesses came across. But you read the transcripts, and Smollett sticking to his story. And we'll have to wait and see. But your thoughts overall on just the complexity of this case?
Well, I mean, he's an actor, right? So he should have come off well on the stand. But at the end of the day, there just seems to be such a mountain of evidence here and such a bad public sentiment for in, a couple year span with the social justice movement and everything this country is going through, to have somebody so blatantly, potentially fake an incident like that in order to gain clout and gain followers is really morally reprehensible. They've got video of the rehearsal. They've got a check that he paid with. And he didn't have much of a story to tell on the stand from what I've seen, other than it happened, you must believe me. And so it's a really weird case. It's something where at some point it's hard to back down when a lie is so big, but he might have done himself well by doing that.
It's an odd case, Michelle, that we wouldn't normally think would get to this point. I mean, even if he's found guilty across the board, he's got no criminal record, he's not going to do any time. Shouldn't this have been pled out?
Yeah, it's extremely bizarre. And it's even more bizarre that someone, the defendant with his stature, would want to even proceed all the way through a trial and have this kind of testimony, some of it which was graphic, presented to the public. So it's a really bizarre scenario, but that is where we find ourselves. And I don't know that his testimony was all that helpful, but nonetheless, he made the decision to testify, and that's where we are.
Yeah, well, we're going to see the closing arguments are expected to begin this morning, and then the jury will get this case, and could be a verdict as soon as today. And we're going to do this. We're going to step aside and take a break because the Missouri courtroom, which is packed this morning. Why? Because Lynn-Lee Rennick is going to take the stand in her own defense, is just getting up and running. The judge on the bench. There's going to be one witness before the jury is coming in now. Let's slip in a break here, get you into the courtroom right after this. Welcome back to CourtTV Live. We're waiting Lynn-Lee Rennick to take the witness stand. Right now, what's happening is the defense brought up a woman by the name of Diana Wassman, asked her just a couple questions about Lynn-Lee's demeanor after Ben was murdered. She said that she was hysterical. She's on cross right now. Let's listen into that. After this witness, we're expecting the defendant, Lynn-Lee Rennick, to take the stand in her own defense.
First, the call came across as a man in the front yard was unconscious and bleeding from his head. That was the information we first received. The next information that we received, you asked a question, I'm giving you an answer.
Okay, go continue, please.
The next information that we received through dispatch was that a 600-pound anaconda had killed him. When I arrived on scene, Mr. Rennick had puncture marks in his arm, and we were worried that it was a poisonous snake. Mrs. Rennick is the one that told us there was no poisonous snakes on site and provided us with the information. I believe his name was Travis. Okay. I can still tell you what Mrs. Rennick was wearing the day that I arrived on site.
Well, I appreciate that, but you told me a second ago you're answering my question. My question was simple. Did you get accurate information so you could go to the crime scene?
Yes, I got an address.
Okay, see, that was my question. And instead you gave me all this answer, okay? Now...
You asked me if I got accurate information. No, I did not.
No, I asked you if you got accurate information so you could arrive at the crime scene.
Okay.
Now, are you aware that the inaccurate information came from Sam Rennick, who also eventually got on the 911 call? He thought it was a snake.
I am.
Okay, so the inaccurate information came from Sam. The accurate information came from Lynn-Lee Rennick. She was the one that told you where to go. Correct?
I do not know where the 911 information came from or who made the 911 call until later.
But we do know, okay, so you have two people out there, Sam Rennick, who thinks it was a snake possibly.
I would hope that he would know his brother didn't have a 600-pound anaconda.
Okay, ma'am, that wasn't my question. Whether he knew it or not, you just told us a second ago that the inaccurate information came from Sam Rennick, correct?
Later on, we were advised of that, yes.
Okay. And the accurate information came from Lynn-Lee Rennick. She was there telling you it wasn't a snake.
Yes.
Okay. She was able to communicate?
Moderately.
She was able to communicate and tell you it wasn't a snake?
She was stopping and saying there was no way a snake did that, yes.
Are you aware that, well, let me ask you this. Did she ever tell you that she was present earlier today when her husband was shot in the head?
No.
She didn't tell you that information?
No, she did not.
She did tell you, as you guys are out there worried about a snake, that it's not a snake?
I wasn't worried about a snake, but she did say it wasn't a snake.
Well, if you weren't worried, either way, there were people worried about a snake, weren't there?
There was multiple people worried about a snake. I was the person that actually came up and looked at the bite wound that they believed was on his arm because I'm familiar with snakes.
And again, I didn't ask you about looking at the bike lanes, but I asked you if there's people that were concerned about a snake.
Yes, there was multiple people worried about snakes.
And she was the one that was able to tell you, you did not need to worry about a snake.
She provided us with information for somebody to tell us whether or not to be worried about a snake. Because at one point in time, they were afraid there might be a poisonous snake.
Okay, again, I think your statement was she told you that when she's laying there on the floor in this fetal position, and she says...
There's no way a snake did that to him. Yes.
She told you, again, so to answer my question, ma'am, she told you it wasn't a snake.
Yes.
I don't have any other questions.
Read the record.
No, Your Honor.
May this witness be finally excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You can step
All right,
down.
we're going to slip in a break. When we come back, Lindley Rennick on the witness stand. Stay with us. Welcome back to Court TV Live. To the courtroom we go. Lindley Rennick on the stand. Let's listen.
Lindley, why are you here today?
I'm being accused of murdering my husband, Ben.
Did you kill Ben?
I did not.
Did you help Michael Humphrey kill Ben?
I did not.
Did you ever want Ben dead?
I never wanted Ben dead.
All right. Before we get into the specifics of what happened, I want to go over a little bit of your background so this jury can get to know you as a person. All right. So can you tell the jury just a little bit about where you're from and your family?
I grew up in Montgomery County, in between the towns of Wellsville and Middletown, just two really small towns. I grew up with my dad, Lyndall, my mom, Brenda, and then I have an older sister named April. Yeah.
Do you have any children, Lindley?
I do. I have 3 children. Matthew, who's 13, Emilia is 9, and then Jackson is 2.
And you said you grew up between Wellsville and Middletown. Where did you graduate from high school?
Wellsville Middletown High School.
Okay. What was high school like for you?
It was rough. I mean, it was fun. I was a cheerleader. I was an All-American cheerleader one year, and so you get to go to like Florida and perform at the halftime.
Excuse me, Judge. I'm going to object.
I'm sorry.
Her cheerleading is irrelevant.
Objection be overruled. Go ahead.
You can continue, Lindley.
So you get to go to Florida and perform at like a halftime show of one of the football games, and cheerleading was kind of what kept me engaged in high school, because outside of that, it was very rough. I was struggling with migraines, eating disorders, and then just circumstantial depression pretty heavily. And I ended up graduating high school. My mom, who was a nurse, she was also a social worker, and she ended up setting me up on a 504 plan my senior year of high school, which basically means that I got to finish my senior year by just completing the 2 credits that I needed. And I was able to go in after hours when nobody else was there and just meet with those 2 teachers that I needed to for those credits to graduate.
When was the very first time that you met Ben Rennick?
So the first time Ben and I met was actually when we were in high school. My boyfriend at the time was in a band with Ben. Ben was a drummer, and so we would go over to Ben's house and they would do band practices and stuff, and then we went over a couple of times to go swimming and just little hangouts like that.
But you and Ben weren't dating at that time?
No.
All right. Can you tell the jury briefly what you did once you graduated high school?
So 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I started school for massage therapy. I moved to Jefferson City, and my sister and I had a small apartment together, and I started classes for massage therapy.
And that would have been, correct me if I'm wrong, but the summer of 2006?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me about the first time that summer that you met Michael Humphrey?
So since I started massage classes like 2 weeks after I graduated high school, which was, May, kind of beginning of June, beginning of summer, I went for a couple weeks of massage classes, and then they did a short summer break. And my sister and her boyfriend at the time, they always organized this really big float trip with their company, and so they invited me to go with them, and that's where I met Michael Humphrey for the first time.
But he was just an acquaintance at that point. You guys didn't start dating or anything?
Yeah.
All right. Were you dating anyone around the end of 2006, beginning of 2007?
2006. Yes, so I had met Josh Hake, who is my oldest son's father, and we had kind of started talking and, I don't know, casually dating around that time.
Did you eventually graduate from massage therapy school?
I did.
And that was March of 2007?
Yeah, the day after I turned 19. So.
Did something else happen the day after you graduated? Oh, I'm sorry. Did something happen the day before you took your boards?
Oh, so I found out that I was pregnant the day before I was supposed to sit and take my massage boards. So you go through the classes, but you come out with a provisional license, so I could shortly practice massage, but you still have to sit for state boards to get licensed. And yeah, the night before I was set to take those, I found out I was pregnant. So.
Well, I didn't hear that last part. What'd you say?
The night before I was set to take my massage boards, I found out I was pregnant.
Oh, okay.
How did you feel when you found out you were pregnant?
Terrified, and I mean, I was just sitting there studying for my exams, and I was just like, I mean, it was unexpected and unplanned. I was excited, but it was just a lot to take in the middle of the night.
How did Josh react, the father, when he found out?
He was excited. So he lived in St. Louis at the time, and when I called to let him know he was leaving the gym from training, and he backed into a light pole.
Now, did Josh end up staying in your and Matthew's life?
In the beginning, yes, but no.
All right.
Ultimately, no.
Can you tell the jury very briefly what happened?
Memorial weekend, I guess it would have been a couple of months after I found out I was pregnant. Josh went down to Lake of the Ozarks, and he was hanging out with friends and stuff there. I had morning sickness so badly, and so I was staying with my sister and dad. They were packing up some stuff, but he ended up getting into a pretty serious car incident, and some other people in the other car were really badly injured, and so he was in the hospital after that, and then he was in jail, and ultimately ended up going to prison. I don't know what the charges or anything were, but he was in prison for quite a long time.
Did you really have no contact with him after he was charged?
No.
Okay. When did you give birth to Matthew?
January 3rd, 2008.
And who was there with you?
My mom and my sister. My dad was there too, but my mom and my sister helped deliver Matthew, so.
All right, so in 2008, you have Matthew and you're working as a massage therapist, correct?
I was not working as a massage therapist, so when I went to take my licensing exams that next day, I missed it by like 2 points. And in the beginning of finding out that I was pregnant, when, before Josh's accident, he really wanted me to move to St. Louis, not work, and just kind of be a stay-at-home mom. I was having a lot of problems with that, but since I hadn't passed my state licensing exam, I had to wait and reapply for my provisional license. Ultimately, I just ended up not doing that. Yeah.
Let me rephrase my question, I guess. At some point, did you begin working as a massage therapist
yes.
again? All right, and when was that?
So I stayed home with Matthew until he was 10 months old, and then I restudied for my exams, took my exams, passed, and then went back to work, or started working, I guess, as a massage therapist.
Where were you working?
I worked at a place called Natural Connections. It's just outside of Jefferson City. It's a wellness center and spa.
Did you enjoy working as a massage therapist?
I did.
What did you like about it?
There at that job, the two people who owned it had been in massage therapy and health and wellness their whole lives, and I learned so much from them just about total body wellness and in so many different aspects, and just seeing so many people come in, whether it was from physical injury or stress, and then knowing that they felt better when they left, and you can visibly see that and how grateful people are to just that you're part of their journey to being healthy and finding that place of